Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and hey, I told everyone just be a little bit patient. I know. I would be lying if I didn't say I had a little cause for concern going into Sunday's home game against the Denver Broncos. 3-1 Denver Broncos team, as I said, beat up on three pretty bad football teams. But, hey, they were still preventing the run. The Steelers didn't show any ability to have a run game or an offense, but they showed both of those things in a 27-19 victory to climb up to 2-3, and maybe some of the panic has subsided, at least for a week. The reports of Ben Roethlisberger's demise have been maybe a little exaggerated. I'm not going to say greatly exaggerated for the 39-year-old quarterback, but a 120.9 rating. But this is exactly the type of game flow that I was talking about. And also, just a little bit, I'm going to kind of vicariously bring Brian into this too from some of our backroom discussions, and of course the stuff that I had mentioned last week, not only in the post game on how did the Steelers fix it, but also with last Friday's preview with former Denver Broncos running back Monty Ball, and him having played with Peyton Manning in a run game. And he asked me a great question. Usually the guests don't ask me a question. He says, what's wrong with the Steelers offense? What are they not doing? And I said, well, they're not getting across the middle. They're not attempting anything over the middle. It seems like almost like back to the 2019 dink dunk on the outsides, give up on the run game. But a lot of that, like I said, a lot of that had been game script. If you heard Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Canada, all of these guys in the post-game press conferences or the press conferences that go out throughout the week, I knew there was a little bit of encouragement. Everybody's like, oh, they're not going to change. We're not changing anything. Matt Canada says, we're not changing anything. And everybody kind of freaks out. Well, some of the fingerprints were already there, but the Steelers, with their inability to get any offense going, get any drives, score first quarter points, what they actually did against the Green Bay Packers, it's a tough football game to win on the road at Lambeau against a quality opponent, more or less a quality quarterback. I understand that the Cincinnati Bengals gave the Packers a little run for their money, but there's some things that are working in the favor of not only the Bengals, even though they lost the game and all those missed field goals. Holy crap, I'm sure Terry's going to talk about those on the WTF. But when a team plays the Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens, there's a few exceptions around the league, but particularly those two squads, we've said it here for years. Everyone else says the same exact thing. They are physical, brutal football games, and the teams limp into the next game looking not so hot. And that's the way the Steelers looked when they played the Dallas Cowboys a year ago. That's the way the Green Bay Packers went into Cincinnati on Sunday. So, speaking of which, you smell the air. It's so much cleaner and fresher, and it feels so good to have a victory Monday for a change, doesn't it? And the Steelers snap a 3-game losing streak. Had most of their players healthy, but some injuries coming out of this game. Of course, Devin Bush, I think, re-aggravated. I don't know if it's the same groin injury, but he has another groin injury. Could be re-aggravating the existing one. Of course, Cam Sutton did not play because of the same injury. James Pierre was in there. I'll have some things to say about James Pierre, good and bad. Hey, he made up for it. Big redemption at the end when it was just critical. I'm going to go through some of the game book, some of the plays and possessions here as well. But overall, pretty positive game for the Steelers. I don't have a whole lot of complaints. We saw special teams do better. We saw the rookie, Presley Harvin, boot a 63-yard field goal when they needed it most. Ben only had to throw the ball 25 times. That's great. 25 attempts, 15 to 25, right on the dot for 60%. 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Could have had 1 or 2. There were still some areas where he was forcing the ball, but it didn't get into his head. And it looked like he had some time, even with Von Miller, who came into the game. Now, if I told all of you this, and I wouldn't have believed it either. So a little bit of, Scout's honor here. 4.5 sacks, 7 hits on quarterbacks through 4 games leading into this game on the Week 5 game here, and he got nothing. He had nada, zero, a big goose egg with Chooks Okorafor of all people, who I was demanding the Steelers sit. So I have a little bit of backpedaling to do and a little bit of an apology, at least for one really good game with Chooks Okorafor. The offensive line, for the most part, with the exception of Chooks, still 2 false start penalties. I know who he's going up against. The Broncos. Oh, geez, who was that? 70 or 78? I'm trying to think who was playing right tackle with TJ Watt right in their face. And the referees missed maybe a false start or two on both sides of the ball yesterday, I'm going to tell you, because Chooks was moving a little more too, as was the guy that was looking across the field at TJ. When you're looking across the field at Von Miller, one of the great pass rushers in this game, I think Ben said of all time, yeah, he's up there for sure. I think we just tend to forget about him because the Broncos have been in this black hole for several years, ever since Peyton Manning had retired. So still a really good defense. They're giving up about 60 rushing yards per game. Only gave up 102 against the Ravens, which is just, I don't know. That's kind of absurd when you think about it. That is what the Baltimore Ravens do, and they're looking to break the Steelers' all-time streak of 100-yard rushing games as well. So we'll see how that ends up going on Monday Night Football. If they break the record, good for them. Records are made to be broken, especially now with 17 games in a season. But this is exactly, speaking of rushing and performances, this is where I was headed. 122 yards on 23 carries for a one. Najee Harris's first 100-yard rush game. He credits the offensive line. Offensive line was getting some push. Najee was getting 2-3 yards at least. And I mean, Ben talked about, for the early downs, maybe even making a third and manageable. Sometimes they didn't need a third and manageable, but it was so much nicer than third and long all the time. Or you saw where the penalties almost self-defeat them. That was one of the problems near the end of the game that made this a little closer than it maybe should have been. But we have preached here on the SCU podcast for years that the backs have to get at least 20 touches. Now, overall, I guess they credit Ben with one run here, but there was a major run versus pass imbalance here, as the Steelers had 35 run attempts if you include Ben's kneel down. That's what the -1 is here. Kalen Ballage, a little disappointed, 4 for 0. Benny Snell, man, did he start the game? He started the game with a special teams penalty, and then he had a drop that should have been an easy first down. I'm out on this guy. I was out on him last week. Had to come back in because Najee was cramping. It wasn't anything too serious. I think the Steelers just didn't want to put him back in the game. Sometimes cramps could be a funny thing, and it was still hot at Heinz Field yesterday, okay? The sun's out. The only thing that's really a redeeming factor is that the Steelers bench gets shade by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That is until, we fall back with the clocks and whatnot. And, of course, the temperature will change too, but still, it's still balmy, like at 80, 81, whatever the temp was there. I even got some sun still on my lips here, a little sunburnt just from, and I'm in the shade. I'm back behind the bench, and I'm in the shade probably about an hour in too, and it's still, they wear black uniforms and everything else. It takes a little bit of a toll out of you, but they put the visitors over where the sun's always on them. So that's something you have to think about. I don't know that we all think about it. We play video games where we watch these guys. We think they're all superhuman, and they get tired during the game and things happen, and he cramped up. And sometimes when you get those cramps, like, you cannot move. It's like paralyzing. And I'm sure that's exactly what was going on with Najee. You could just tell the way he he was walking off the field. It wasn't so much a limp. I was like, yeah, if he was hurt, he would have had trainers come out. The way he came off the field, I'm like, yeah, dude's cramping up. The other injury, of course, Juju Smith-Schuster, sounds like his year could be over. It sounds like a shoulder injury. I know he was already nursing some sore ribs as well for the last 2 games. Would be a real bittersweet end if he doesn't end up being a Pittsburgh Steeler next season. So my thoughts and obviously prayers and everything else go out to Juju Smith-Schuster and to everyone that's in his family, friends, circle, and of course his teammates. I think the Steelers obviously can weather that storm with someone like James Washington coming into the game. Cody White, we'll talk about him. Cody White's a physical guy. I like him. Man, he had one fall through the breadbasket as well. But losing Juju, he's a leader out there. And, 2 catches, 6 yards, doesn't quite do his game justice. His whole season hasn't really done himself justice. He does the dirty work that a lot of the receivers in the league do not do. Very selfless, may I add. Just 15 receptions this year for 129 yards. Did not get in the end zone. It's just he had the one rush touchdown, of course. He was doing some of the jet sweep stuff, which I think that's the play he got hurt on in this one, too. I'm trying to remember. A lot of the motion, a lot of people said they didn't see it a lot in yesterday's game. It was still there. And there was like a play that was just like, Ben, whoop, 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 motion, Juju, I think, coming through, or Ray McLeod, and then it was still just straight ahead. Najee Harris and getting behind the horses. Kevin Dotson, I thought, had a better game. Dan Moore gets beat on one. Well, he actually washed his guy all the way behind Ben, and Ben is still waiting with the ball. Dan, that's more than one time that's happened with Dan. He's just got to continue with the play. I think that's just a little bit of a rookie mistake, a little bit of a learning curve there, something where he may have gotten away with this in college that he's not going to get away with it in the pros because everything is so split second. So let's take a look at, I talked about some of these individual performances. Of course, Chase Claypool topping 100 yards with the touchdown, 130 on 5 receptions. Deontay Johnson just 2 for 72, but man, the one that opened this game was spectacular. And, of course, Najee added another 20 receiving off of 2 catches to pad his all-purpose yards all the way up to 142, 5.3 yard average. And even Benny Snell, for having kind of a stinker run at one point, averaged 4 yards a carry. He kind of redeemed himself a little bit at the end of this game, but I kind of wonder what is going to happen going forward. The whole offseason, we're like Snell or Ballage. Anthony McFarland's been on IR. He's now practicing. They're going to have to activate him or Zach Banner here in the next week to get them back on the roster. So it's going to be interesting to see where McFarland's place is. There were a lot of 2-back sets in training camp where they're using McFarland in the pass game as well as the run game, and he's quicker than a hiccup too. So maybe not the biggest guy, but he's not going to gain those big yards or those yards after contact like Najee Harris will. But let's take a look at this game from the top to the bottom. The offense actually got announced here at the game, and I was like, oh, geez, the offense. Man, this is like, nobody likes the offense right now. I'm surprised that some people, there was a little bit, I don't know if people were yelling chooks or booing at them at the 1 point too, but the offensive line just, they weren't getting the love that, like, Pat Freiermuth is already like an adopted son of the Steel City, obviously, but like Ben and Juju and Deontay and Chase Claypool and those guys, they get all the adulation. Of course, Najee does too. Talk about adopted son, man. Najee is just through and through. What a great guy. Go watch his press conference if you hadn't already. Gives all the credit to the offensive line. He truly is, like, he gets it. Not only on the field, but off the field. He seems like a very selfless player. I can see why the Steelers made him the number 1 pick. And you could also see why, based on my previous comments of, do you take the 11th best tackle? Do you take Tevin Jenkins, who is not going to play this year? Like, what do you do that's different? I think the Steelers were somewhat vindicated here. They challenged the offensive line. All the beat reporters were in that room trying to get different people to say exactly how they challenged or what they said or anything like that. There might be a buffet or two on the line this week that maybe Ben or some other guys are footing the bill for. Maybe that's what it was. But, excuse me, as always, I need that coffee when I'm flying solo here. Steelers, 6 plays, 85 yards right from the beginning. They run on the first 2 downs and then also ran Juju. These small chunks, I mean, it was 6 yards on the first play, 3 yards on the second. Ben finds Chase Claypool for 23. They're moving the ball pretty good. Juju comes around for 3 yards. The incomplete pass to Benny Snell on 2nd and 7, but it's led to the 3rd and 7, where Ben throws, and it's 35 yards in the air, by the way, for the 50-yard touchdown, the extra 15, untouched by Deontay Johnson to go up 7-0, 6 plays, 85 yards. Just under 3 minutes elapsed. And that was really nice to see. I was hot that the Steelers lost another coin toss and the teams have to defer and the fans are never there at the beginning of the third quarter. And if the way the scripts have been going with the Steelers, the opponent has been scoring before halftime and then getting the ball back. It has been just a mess. And that's the reason why they've had to throw the ball so much. When you limit Ben to not having to do too much, We're talking about like 20, 25 fewer, like half as many throws in this game. You see how it turns out. It turns out real well, and he still puts up like great statistics. It's just I think you're in less danger when you're able to do this, and it was very promising to see them do this against the Denver Broncos. I won't be remiss to say that Shelby Harris, how much did Shelby play? Because he got hurt early on, and I'm trying to think, did he return to this game? Obviously, one of the guys we highlighted at the very beginning. Yeah, Shelby ended up playing 42 snaps of the 65, so he got quite a bit of time in there, but he came out for a small spell too. Denver Broncos, they aren't chumps when it comes to their defense, and the Steelers are really taking it to them, but it got scary at the beginning. It's kind of like the Steelers turn back into the pumpkin. It's like Cinderella on the first drive, and the defense pretty much a 3-and-out here. Steelers get the ball back. I mean, it's pretty bad field position. They're on their 17, and they put together a halfway decent drive here, but this is the aforementioned play. I'm trying to see how many plays in on this possession, the second possession. 10 plays in, but they really only moved the ball 28 yards, and it ends with the strip sack and the fumble that's recovered by Johnson, and not the Steelers' Johnson, by the way. And they actually are so far in the backfield there that they gain 10 yards. They end up on the Steelers were on their 49. It ends up with Denver getting the ball on the Pittsburgh 29. Steelers defense, great plays here. Javonte Williams, who's a beast, by the way, talked about his ability to break tackles. TJ Watt sends him sailing for a loss of 4. And then Steelers hold to only a field goal. 39-yard field goal, but still points on the board that were unnecessary points. I'd like to see Dan Moore do a little more. Ben says he got to get rid of the ball a little quicker. He holds on to it a little long there. A little combination of both, but still I would like to see. Ben doesn't know this guy's coming from behind, okay? Dan knows he washed him out too there. You got to stick with the play some. The penalties were a little bit better too. They weren't perfect by any means, but for the most part, the only ones that really hurt were the false starts. There was a hold by Kendrick Green at some point that I couldn't see. My apologies, being in the stadium, not a great replay when you're looking up at the scoreboard. If it was legit, great. Leave it in the comments if it wasn't, and you think the refs stink. Nobody knew who this ref was, so he doesn't know how to stink yet. He wasn't as bad as some of the other names that we already know. So, Steelers get the ball back, and they're working at the beginning of the second quarter, and it is a screen pass to Zach Gentry, complete opposite, little bit of misdirection, and I'm trying to think who was out in front of that. I think it was Dan Moore, actually. That was a nice little 13-yard pickup. They still are working with Najee, both in the run and the pass game. Najee touches the ball 4 straight times, 4 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, and 20. They give him a breather. Kalen Ballage comes in 1st and 10 and loses 3 yards. Ben couldn't connect with Ballage on second down on a pass either. So now you have the same exact problems that you had earlier, Ballage and Benny Snell. Benny Snell, I believe, was in on the previous. Yeah, I had already mentioned that. Sorry. Scratch that. 3rd and 13. Couldn't connect with Juju Smith-Schuster. Chris Boswell comes in, 48-yard field goal. Steelers up 10-3. So it's feeling pretty good. The defense forces another 3-and-out of the Denver Broncos offense. It's like, this is feeling really, really good. Who is this team now? We've got the defense has stayed fresh because the offense has mostly sustained some sort of drives here and scoring drives to this point for the most part. However, the offense ends up coming back right off the field here. Najee gets 3 and 5 yards, but Ben tries to go deep, doesn't connect with Chase Claypool. This is like the damned if you do, damned if you don't. This is 3rd and 2. And he goes deep for Claypool, doesn't connect, but he connected with Deontay earlier. And these were the plays where there was they weren't on the same page over the last few weeks. And you look like a genius when they work. When you don't, everybody's telling you to bench the old man. Father Time is caught up, and Ben Roethlisberger, he's finished. He's done. Stick a fork in him. I don't believe that by any means. But let's see here. You've got Denver. Once again, another field goal drive. They end up a 56-yard punt by Presley Harvin, by the way. But they gave up. They got gashed by Williams on 3rd and 1 for 49 yards. And James Pierre, this is one of the big plays I was talking about where he comes in, chases this down, and stops them at the 2. And then there's a penalty for delay of game because Javonte Williams spikes the ball. He didn't get in the end zone, and you don't see this happen, and that's a rookie mistake from him as well. NFL players know, most of the guys that do the thing, the first down, they're dropping the ball right at the spot. The referees could pick it up. I still think, even when Antonio Brown started doing that and Bell were doing that, I'm like, I don't really care for this much. Some guys will hand the ball directly to the referee, too. They're like, here's the ball. We're going back to business. You know what I mean? You do your job, I do mine. And that's pretty cool there. But this cost them big time. They dropped back 5 yards, first at 7. Williams only picks up 2. Teddy Bridgewater gets annihilated by Devin Bush here on what I felt was a rare inside linebacker blitz. We haven't seen quite the same volume of blitzing with Keith Butler. He's been just relying on the 4 guys up front for the most part in most situations, no corners. Although Carl Joseph does get in for a snap here at some point in this game, and they sent him out kind of in the old Mike Hilton type role. You may have caught that in the game, you might not. I believe, what was he wearing, 30? I'm like, oh, that's got to be Carl Joseph because I don't recognize that number. By the way, 35, Arthur Mollett, I thought had a pretty solid game. They used Trey Norwood. They also had a combination, I tweeted this out, with Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, and Melvin Ingram, all 3 of the edge rushers on the field at the same time. And it's not uncommon. They don't always come off the edge. The Steelers will stack these guys in the middle and try and force some more pressure on the inside. On this one, man, Devin Bush just blew right through. And when you got Devin Bush speed, Teddy Bridgewater is not going to backpedal or move fast enough to get away from this. It's a loss of 12. Denver then ends up taking a timeout to get their stuff together, which they really didn't. James Pierre ends up stopping Javonte Williams here for only a gain of 6 yards. They hold to another field goal, so it's 10-6. So either one of these, the defense got gashed for a big play. They didn't have that large of a breather, but when they're on the sidelines, you get more of this good stuff. Steelers offense gets the ball back, and Ben Roethlisberger finds Chase Claypool a 59-yard connection on 2nd and 7. Then there's the Chukwuekorfor for false start, one of them. Loss of 5 yards. Now the Steelers end up taking a timeout. There's about 3 minutes left, 2nd and 15. Ben doesn't connect with Najee Harris. 3rd down, he looks for Deontay Johnson here, who gets interfered with. Some people were saying, maybe that was ticky-tack. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think Kyle Fuller got his head around or had any attempt to play the ball. So this gets down to Denver 1. So they took a shot on this one. They know pretty much going to kick a field goal, still be up 7 points. Let's go deep. They attacked. I'm not always for the high-risk, high-reward plays, especially on 3rd down. But in these instances throughout the first half, it worked. It worked really well for the Steelers, and even more so, that other one to Chase Claypool for 59 yards, 2nd and 7. So when you're getting a little bit of chunks, 3, 4, 5 yards on 1st down, it makes things a lot more manageable to take these shots maybe on 2nd down and or on 3rd down. Najee Harris goes over the top of the pile once again, leaping like Superman. They are up 17-6. And there's about 2 minutes left, a 2-minute warning for the Denver Broncos. They get pretty much held here. There's a couple of penalties that end up happening. Alex Highsmith, he has a neutral zone infraction. It's enforced for 5 yards. This was after Garrett Bowles already had the false start, but it's still 3rd and 10. Bowles gets tagged once again for a holding, and then there's an incomplete pass. So a lot of this pressure, believe it or not, Alex Highsmith working on Bowles, and this was the whole series here. Bowles with the false start, Highsmith with the neutral zone infraction, and then Bowles with the holding. Pretty cool stuff. This one's declined on 3rd down. They have to punt. Steelers get the ball back and make some really puzzling moves with 1.5 minutes left, and I believe the 2 timeouts, and they left one still on the board. I know they didn't want to give the ball back because they got it on the 10. And then they went to the 13. Kendrick Green, ineligible downfield. That's what he gets hit with on the penalty. Backs him up to 2nd and 12, the Pittsburgh 8. Ben finds Eric Ebron, and they convert on Najee gets 13 yards, then Ebron catches for 5. They call a timeout. They're out to the 21. Then all of a sudden it was just like this weird draw play with Kalen Ballage on 2nd and 5, 23 seconds. they didn't make much more of a push to go downfield. I thought it was a very conservative set of play calls on this series with a minute and a half of Ben Roethlisberger and 2 timeouts. I thought maybe they could have got down to field goal range. We see later, Chris Boswell is nailing 50-yarders and beyond at Heinz Field. And it doesn't matter which end he's in, but especially the closed end, he's almost money, unlike a lot of the field goal kickers on Sunday. Get to halftime, the Broncos get the ball back. Not a 3-and-out type series, but the Steelers' defense holds, gets them to about midfield. The Steelers get the ball back on their 14 and proceed to have a 14-play, 86-yard drive. Kevin Dotson, a holding. Everyone didn't get a penalty on the offensive line this week, but you still got a couple of them, and these are going to happen. You know what I mean? So, I'm not going to downplay the good stuff that happened. It just wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was so detrimental to this. There was 2nd and 17, but Najee picks up 14 yards on that, and then Ben finds Claypool for 14. It just wasn't like, here, let's throw short of the sticks. Like last week, I said they were finally getting to the sticks or throwing beyond and starting to get some of that, because the previous weeks it was like Ben was still trying to unlearn the Randy Fichtner dink and dunk crap. And I think he unlearned it completely this week. I was happy with most of this. By the way, this was the series with the 51-yard Chris Boswell field goal that was good, nullified by a leverage penalty. You don't see those very often. 15 yards that gets the Steelers into the red zone. Denver 18, and then Ben finds Chase Claypool 18 yards out, 3rd and 10. They're taking the shots. They knew they were already going to have 3. They're up 24-6, and then they let off the gas as we enter the 4th quarter. Teddy Bridgewater had to do something here. They get the ball with 2:41 in the 3rd, and they proceed to hold the ball for about almost 7.5 minutes, 14 plays, 75 yards, which finishes with, is it Kendall Hinton? I'm trying to remember his first name. This is the wide receiver. They were just so ravaged on their wide receiver group. This is the guy that ended up having to play quarterback last year when all 3 of the Denver quarterbacks were out with the COVID protocols. But he got to them a few times. Noah Fant finally started to show up in this game in the second half. He was largely absent throughout, but still only 3 catches for 20 yards. The guy who did the most damage, of course, was Cortland Sutton, who I said is a bona fide wide receiver 1, and then Tim Patrick as the game wore on. Both of them, 7 receptions apiece. Sutton had the TD and 120 yards, and Patrick had 89. Got to button this up a little bit because they still gave up a decent chunk of yards, 106 rushing combined if you count Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. A lot of that on the big 49-yard carry, though. So the averages are a little skewed. Williams with 7.6, Gordon with 3.8. You still got to see this get a little bit better when you know that the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens are run-first type teams within your own division, of which you got to play twice each still. But hey, week 5, you're seeing a little bit more promise here. That's what I wanted to see. However, you know this game, you know the way it is. If the Steelers end up going 3-and-out here, they're only up 11 points. It's a 2-possession game if you have a 2-point conversion at some point by Denver. Najee gets 4, he gets 3. Kendrick Green, the hold call, 2nd and 16. Betty Snell gets 9, but Ben Roethlisberger couldn't get anything. This was a short pass to Ray McCloud. I wasn't totally understanding of this, but I guess the coverage was pretty good on this. According to Roethlisberger, they asked what he saw. Presley Harvin, though, with the big leg punter. That's what I'm going to call him, because calling him like anything that's like portly or large or, Brian's kind of a little cruel with that stuff. This young man, he might eat clean for all we know. He's just got, large, ample lower body, and boom, these kicks, 63 yards. It was only brought out by Deontay Spencer for 13. This was a nice field flipping play that the Steelers special teams had been missing. And Harvin, as a rookie too, had a couple of bad punts in the previous few games. So this backed him up. Unfortunately, this is James Pierre getting beat for 39 yards here on 2nd and 1 with about 6.5 left in the game. Just under 6 when the snap was taken from the Pittsburgh 39. So Cortland Sutton, 39 yards, beats James Pierre. Oh, geez, we got a game here. However, the 2-point conversion is no good. It's 24-19. Steelers, you got to answer here. Got to put up some type of points at the very minimum. Now Najee Harris is out. Benny Snell for 2 yards. Ooh, how's this going to work? Deontay Johnson, 22. Claypool for 16. They're getting it going. Snell, just 1 yard. Now Denver's got to use their timeouts, which this is okay. You know, Denver knows this is what the Steelers are going to try and do now because you're now, below 4 minutes. So the clock's running. You get Denver to burn a timeout. Then the Steelers have to take a timeout here because Ben didn't like the look that they saw on 3rd and 5. Benny Snell goes for 4 yards. It's 4th and 1 from the 26, but this is a 43-yard chip shot. Chris Boswell secures this back up to 8 points with a 27-19 score, which ends up being the final here. But the Broncos still made it interesting with about 2.5 left. They didn't have any timeouts, but they had the 2-minute warning. A couple chunks here or there. You get no huddle offense. You're under a minute. Bridgewater gets all the way down after he finds Hinton once again for 23 yards, and they're down to the Steelers 9, and you're like, oh, geez, is this really going to happen? I don't want any bonus football. I get home late enough as it is. Bridgewater, incomplete to Tim Patrick coverage. Joe Hayden, just what a monster play by Joe Hayden. Did you see how high he got up? I mean, he could dunk over a backboard on the basketball hoop. That was wild. He got way up there. Bridgewater looks short for Melvin Gordon, and he picks up about 6 yards, but Joe Schobert is there to stop him. And the Steelers, I didn't like that they got into prevent so early on the previous series where Sutton beat James Pierre, but here they're holding this down. Bridgewater looks for Deontay Spencer. There's coverage by Terrell Edmonds. Good coverage there. 4th and 3, do or die. 17 seconds left on the clock. Intercepted. James Pierre, not fooled by the wide receiver 1 right there. Gets both feet down, too. What a great catch by, we always talk about DBs. They're DBs, with the exception of Trayvon Diggs in Dallas right now, right? If anyone's paying attention to that, an interception in like every game this year. Brothers with Stephon too. So there's definitely, they put something in the water when you're talking about the Watts and the Edmonds and some of these family ties here, the Bosas. It's some fun stuff. And TJ on this latter part down there was like inches from swatting this ball too from Teddy Bridgewater. But I think the most important thing to gain here, for those of you who weren't in attendance, there was no Renegade all the way through this fourth quarter. We still hadn't heard Renegade, the big pep rally type song. If you've never seen it, the screen goes black, everyone goes nuts, everyone's twirling terrible towels. I mean, people had poked fun for years that why is Sticks like the big rallying cry for the Steelers and their defense and these defensive stands. Whoever, kudos, hats off. I won't take it off because I'm bald. I got nothing to show off here. But hats off, though, to whoever makes those decisions on when to do these things in game. They knew the 2-minute warning was coming. They held off for it. And they held off a little more and then started it so it went almost all the way up to the red hat, as you would call it, the guy who says, okay, we're back from commercial break on the sidelines for TV. The place was absolutely bonkers. And there was a few guys, some of the beat writers and stuff, no Renegade. Is this gone? Has it been a bad luck charm? I present to you Exhibit A. TJ was almost there too, and James Pierre. It felt like maybe it wasn't going to happen the way you would have wanted to. There was a few chunks here or there, but Renegade is back also. So that was great to see, and the Heinz Field faithful were just chomping at the bit for that because it didn't play during the Bengals game. Why would they have played it during the Bengals game? And then, of course, had to wait one more week with them on the road. So the Steelers get up to 2-3. You got the Browns losing and the Bengals losing. Of course, it's still Monday here, so we don't know the result yet for Monday Night Football and the Baltimore Ravens, but they could be right back in this sucker, just like I was saying. You're going to have the Seattle Seahawks come in for a primetime game with Geno Smith Sunday night, backup quarterback, and a very bad defense. It could very well be back to 500, and depending on what happens as some of the other schedules get harder, remember the AFC North shares a lot of the same teams, and when Other teams are beating up on maybe the Texans or somebody that isn't necessarily the best competition in the NFL right now. Well, the Steelers are having to play like the Packers, and we see the Raiders are an improved team this year, and obviously dealing with injuries, and everybody's dealing with that. But the Steelers, I think they're going to right the ship here. Maybe 3-3 heading into the bye week is exactly what you want them to see. And just imagine they get a chance right after that with the Cleveland Browns for a little bit of the rematch from the final 2 games of last season, from the Week 17 and then the wild card. So a lot of promise here. If they could keep the offense going this way, this was a good defense. The Seattle Seahawks are not a good defense, but they are well coached, but they're also down. Russell Wilson, I don't think he's missed a game in his career. So this is a little bit to the detriment of the Seahawks coming in also from the West Coast, but we'll be looking at that here in the near future. For those of you who had some money on this game, I have to mention my bookie here, of course, because if you didn't get in on this, you should have with the promo code Steel City. This was on Friday when I had Monty Ball on the show. This was a straight-up pick-em. And then the Steelers at one point ended up a 1.5-point underdog in this game. The over-under, I think, went as low as 39.5. So if you went on the over, I'm like, NFL teams, that's a really low over-under. And the 1.5 points with the Steelers at home, I know it didn't feel like maybe the most secure place to put your money, but just think about this going forward. You got the Seattle Seahawks. So just remember, where you're betting is just as important as who you're betting on. That's why I always tell people to put your money down at my bookie. You got the Arizona Cardinals right now are red hot, unbeaten. You got the Kansas City Chiefs on the ropes. I wonder, you're going to bench Patrick Mahomes? Is there any talk of that? Just like Big Ben. But there's so many things coming down right to the wire. But thankfully, my bookie's lock of the season has returned. You've got other things coming, like the Las Vegas and Seattle NHL opening night game. Last weekend you had Wilder and Fury and their throwing blows and 5 knockdowns. What a fight that was too. But if you get in on the NHL game, for those of you who want to see the expansion Kraken, when either team scores in the game, you win. You heard that right. When the lamp lights red, you get the bread. I don't know. Risk it for the biscuit, maybe. I like what they call the hockey puck the biscuit for some of my other people. But if you're not into hockey, we're going to be looking at some of these odds later in the week. But take that easy win, pat yourself on the back, and use your winnings towards your NFL Week 6 picks. And it includes those same Cardinals with the Cleveland Browns. What was I just saying? It's setting up the storylines right here. So if the Cardinals can beat the Browns and knock them down yet another peg, and the Steelers can beat the Seahawks, you got a bye week coming, and then you got a Halloween just battle coming up. Don't miss out on winning season, though. Head out to MyBookie and use the promo code Steel City. You'll get double your first deposit. That's the promo code Steel City. Double your funds, double your winnings. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. Later this week, I hope to have yet another special guest. We'll see. Maybe I can get Brian on the horn or some of the other guys. I just haven't been able to get on the same page with everyone. Everything's moving so fast. You got a quarter of the football season already in the books. Week 5 is about to wrap up right here, and it's like before you know it, you're going to blink in half of what we wait for. Most wonderful time of the year. It's the 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and football. Those just aren't gimmicks on my wall. This is the way I live my life. It's like football, inject it into my veins, and we're going to be halfway through this stuff. It's going to bring a tear to my eye, but at least it's not the Steelers making me cry right now. Maybe a little shed a tear of happiness to walk out of Heinz Field with a victory. Felt very good about that. Let's see if they could lick a few of their wounds. They got a little bit of a later game, a little bit more time to maybe get some of these guys up to speed, hopefully. We'll see what's going on with those that are on IR. Oh, the big news, too. Yeah, Friday, I saw this. This was after I think I talked to Monty. And Stephon Tuitt has been practicing, too. This could be a real big development for the Steelers, something to keep your eye on. I'm going to target him for coming back after the bye for that Cleveland game. And that could be just a monster addition to this defense. So looking forward to seeing the Steelers get healthy, get their complete defense, get their complete team together. And I'm telling you, I like the way the schedule falls out too. I know the Bears are playing some halfway decent football. It seems like they're a little erratic as well, but they're still on the schedule. The Lions have been losing some close games. That tends to kind of become infectious with teams like that, especially when they're no-win teams. And then they'll have some really hot road games against the Chargers and the Bengals and the Ravens, so it's going to get a little more competitive before it's not. We knew this schedule was going to be somewhat brutal, but these are the games that you got to take the W's and continue to build upon. And with 7 teams making the postseason and an extra game in season this year with 17 instead of 16, I do think that the Steelers are good enough to be in that group of 7 that ends up making the playoffs of the AFC Conference. I'm not going to say they're going to win a division. I'm not going to say they're going to have a bye. The AFC North teams are going to absolutely beat each other up. You got to see what's going to happen with Joe Burrow moving ahead. What was it, throat contusion or whatever? They think he's going to be fine. I hope that young man doesn't get ruined by that team. I really don't. As I said, he's the guy who scares me the most. He's been playing some crazy football, at least 2 touchdowns in every game, and he's the one who scares me the most going forward as far as development of the other teams. Browns got a squad. Baker Mayfield, I don't think he's the game-winning drive guy. Sorry, I know Charles is going to jump in the comments here. He's always here, the big Browns fan, always listening to the enemy here. We'll see what happens with the Ravens. They've been winning some close ones. Is their record indicative of the type of team they are? I'm not sure that it is either. So still got some football to play, still got some things to watch, but it's not all downhill for the Steelers. I got to call out one comment I saw on Facebook or Twitter or something. There was someone that said they were sad because they felt the Steelers could tank and get a top pick. It's week 5. If you're wearing any of this gear, just give it away. Goodwill or the Salvation Army or something, just give it away. Give it to somebody else in your family that's a real fan. Just turn in your fan card and go jump on a different bandwagon, because that's obviously where you're at. Wanting the Steelers to have a top draft pick and be a bad season. What if they go, I should screen capture that, because anything can happen. Remember, Tampa Bay didn't win their division. They were 7-5 at one point before their bye week last year, and then they win all the way out. They go absolutely bonkers and win the Super Bowl. And I'm not going to say that the Steelers are going to necessarily do that. Anything is possible, however. And what a foolish comment that will look like. Some knee-jerk reactions. There's still people talking about offensive line play and things like that. It's like, did you watch the same game? I'm not sure that you did. But hats off. Brian, you said get some tight ends involved, get the fullback. I didn't want the fullback involved too much, but get him involved get Derek Watt in there just enough that he could help out this offensive line. So that'll do it for us today. Look forward to seeing the Steelers hopefully continue on this roll of momentum. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, my name is Joe, and we encourage everyone out there, as usual, to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.